Hello, how are you doing? Welcome to this to the 60 Day 60 Voices session today. And as you know, already know, with the 30 odd videos that have been done so far with different partners, this is a learning and collaborative initiative. And the idea is to speak with a partner each day and to understand what are they doing in the current COVID crisis and how are they supporting and helping entrepreneurs, face challenges that are coming up today, due to the crisis that's ensuing because of the lockdowns that have been enabled, etc. And I'm very happy to say today that we have Mr. Ravi Garikipati, who is the co-founder of Davinta Financial. And welcome, Ravi.
Welcome, PD, and a pleasure to be here this morning. Hopefully, I will be able to share a thing or two that might be, of some use for the ecosystem.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. And I think to kick off the discussion, I think I would like to ask you from your perspective, what are the key 3 or 4 challenges that you're seeing entrepreneurs face, the entrepreneurs you work with face today, given the lockdown and given the crisis that's there in the world today?
Yeah, so I was talking about it briefly before the camera rolled on. Our primary focus is livelihood entrepreneurship, and the backdrop is rural, underserved, underbanked, and women at the core of what we do, right? And the challenges that we face are largely, to do with the livelihood activity that they're embarking on.
Right.
And in most cases, we believe a good chunk will be quickly back on their feet as soon as the lockdown is lifted, given the focus is primarily essential services, again, core of the core essential services. And we'll get back to that baseline pretty quickly. And that said, given the nature of this lockdown, as long as it has been, they may be in dire need of some working capital. We probably have to look at each customer and assess their current working capital needs and then provide the lifeline there. And then I think the fact that the government of India, Reserve Bank of India rather, advised NBFCs and banks to extend moratorium, that's holding this segment in good stead. So they have a bit of a relief in terms of addressing their liability on their loans that they've taken in the past.
Right.
And so that's one segment. The second segment where we see not really a challenge, but I think we need to be cognizant and mindful is while they're raring to go and stay committed to the livelihood activity, whatever they took on prior to the lockdown, the post-lockdown, we see some challenges around the supply chain that they're dependent on, both on the input and output side.
Right.
So we are spending a good chunk of time understanding the supply chain side of things and working with ecosystem partners to repair that, and in some cases provide alternate ways. So that's a work in progress. We are actively working with ecosystem partners and by staying close to our borrower segment. The third is basically the segment where we believe will definitely struggle doing what they were doing before, if they continue doing what they were doing before. Right. Because the need for that particular service or whatever products they're producing may be not as important as needy as it was before. And so then we are actually looking at what else could work for this segment, and keeping in view, time to market and ability for someone to upskill to be able to carry on that livelihood activity should be minimal and things of that nature. So we are working with the input partners, and in this case NGOs, and evaluating various livelihood activities that make sense in that geo that they're part of, and in parallel also evaluating the market side of equation to take care of the demand. So those are largely 3 challenges that we are looking at.
Thanks so much, Ravi. And I think it automatically leads to my second question, because my understanding is that Davinta doesn't just finance, right? But you look at the entire value chain and see wherever interventions can be made. So
Yeah.
from a point of view of relief, I do understand. But let's say rehabilitation, right? What happens a year down the line, a year and a half down the line? Where do you see, the key role being played by Davinta in the business recovery, right? I mean, what would happen then? What do you picturize happening at that point of time?
Yeah. So, and I think, the in our case, speaking of livelihood entrepreneurship, our philosophy hypothesis is, these segments largely, dependent on local economy, and they do not have a huge impact from the macro dynamics, so to speak. And like I just spoke about a few challenges, and if we
Right.
address them, they are good to go and they're very sustainable in nature. And we continue to explore various other vibrant, sustainable livelihood activities pan India, and working closely with local partners, NGOs per se, and we work closely with the government as well. And then of course, the demand is well understood to begin with, and then we focus on the supply and shaping the supply, right? So, but we also have a focus to look at micro entrepreneurs, and we haven't launched that particular business yet, and we were going to do that sometime in April, but this lockdown has pushed out some of those plans by a quarter or so. What we see is basically, looking at these micro entrepreneurs and understanding the way do they do business today, and also sort of bringing this a new normal, right, into context, and shape their behavior in terms of how they do business, right? And we do think a lot of these guys need to have some digital presence on online marketplaces, right? And contactless is going to be way of life in some pockets of society, right? And you will see less and less footprints in their stores or whatever, right?
Right.
And digital payments is going to be a second nature for most of us, right? And we have to basically create this awareness and provide this education to this merchant base that we are focusing on, that they need to digitize certain aspects of the business.
Right.
And we're also going to help them find their presence on digital platforms as well. And that's one. And secondly, and the demand and supply side, we have to find ways again to look at opportunities that are beyond the obvious things that they're used to today. Today, most of these guys are neighborhood entrepreneurs, right? They just focus at the neighborhood, and that's about it. So in future, when everybody is on an online marketplace, then geo boundaries make no sense, and everybody is relying on some delivery infrastructure, and then there's some fulfillment guy. In this case, a merchant could be one of them, right?
Right.
So we have to basically help them think beyond the boundaries that they set themselves with, and shape the business to address the borders as kind of an opportunity, right? So that those are three things, right? And for that, the demand is going to be a little different from what they're used to, and the digitization of some of the business activities, primarily around payments, and then they need to have a decent presence on digital channels.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for I think putting that into perspective. I think the next question that I have is for our broader ecosystem, and how do you see collaboration happening further in our ecosystem, right? How should all of us work together so that this entrepreneur at the end of the day benefits from our work in a better way than not, right? And so where do you see collaboration play a very important or key role as part of this entire initiative that you're taking?
Yeah, absolutely. I think something like game and similar platforms can play a huge role, and they already do, and we would love to see them playing such role in future as well. If there's anything, the opportunities are bigger now, the one thing that comes to my mind as I'm looking at a few livelihood activities in Assam. And the case in point here is we look at weavers as a community there, and we get them to do certain livelihood activities around weaving. And pass forward, and we see the need for certain other services and products, not necessarily in their in a specific geo, but outside of their geo, potentially outside of Assam as well.
Right.
So we see platform like a game and similar such platforms, helping us cross pollinate with other ecosystems, right, and cross collaborate with other ecosystems, and extend our supply chain and demand side, and mutually, right? And that's very important. And we no longer can say, this is my area of focus, and this is what we end up doing. And when things like this happen, the demand side of the equation changes dramatically. And then you just have to take a step back and look at the macro thing, and can you still make a play? And you can only do that by leveraging a platform like yourself, where you have a bird's eye view, and you see the mismatches between supply and demand, both on the skill side and the goods and services side. And we can leverage and tap into a platform such as yourself and to synergize that.
Great. I think that's wonderfully put, Ravi. And so I think before we close, my last question to you would be that as an entrepreneur, right, and as somebody who has done so well so quickly, what's your message to entrepreneurs, the micro entrepreneurs in today's world, right? Because I think through the conversations you would have had with entrepreneurs, you would have seen a huge amount of stress that's there. There are opportunities, but there's stress still, right? So how like what message would you like to give to them as a closing point?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think I would love to paint a rosy picture, right? And all of us can align to and attest to this thought process, right? This year is largely about stay afloat and survive, right? And if you can wait to this crisis and stick your neck out of the troubled water, you can claim a victory, right? And any ambitions you have in terms of growing your business and all that stuff, you have to take a pause on that, right? And sort of be a little circumspect in terms of your experiments. You're trying to sort of chance your arms on few things, and bringing your entrepreneurial spirit to the fore. This is not the time to do wild experiments, right? You take a stock of a macro scenario, working closely with the partners like yourself and other ecosystems, and figure out where you fit in and why you belong where you belong, and consolidate yourself in that space, and then study your business. It will take some time, and then once you get past that, then you also have to be very aware and cognizant of what the new normal is going to be. Everybody and their uncle came with their own predictions what the new normal going to be. But I think we have to wait for things to settle, and in 12 to 18 months we have a hopefully a far better view into what the future going to hold for us. And one has to be very cognizant and aware of that, and take appropriate actions, and leverage the ecosystems accordingly.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you so much, Ravi. I think it was, as always, wonderful speaking with you, and I think the incredible amount of understanding and knowledge that you bring to us and to the greater ecosystem. So always grateful for that, and look forward to the amazing work we are doing together. Anyways, right? So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, PD. Always great to have a conversation with you and engage with Game, and you guys do a wonderful job. I continue to be associated with you guys, and hopefully we'll do wonderful things together for the community.